All right, guys, we got Warren from Bushveld Reptiles here. He's all the way from South Africa, but he lives here in the United States. And he's going to go over some really awesome stuff with house snakes. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned for this one.
Cool. Okay, Warren, honestly, I appreciate you making time. You know, we've been talking about having you on for a couple months now, so this is a treat for us. House snakes, me personally, I've always had a real like for them. I haven't even owned one yet, but I guarantee you in the very near future, I'm going to start slowly building a colony up for myself, and I think Benjamin's talking about doing the same.
Excellent.
I feel like this species in the United States is kind of one of those niche species at the moment, but honestly, I think with the variety of mutations that we have, again, your presence in the United States and what you brought with you, I think the species has a real potential of being a big colubrid in the United States the next couple of years. Even like we discussed on the phone a few days ago, how they have that almost like a python look to them, which I really dig. But yeah, so, you know, Ben probably told you we start out the same way every time. I want to hear about what it's like to be a reptile kid or a reptile teenager in all Africa getting into this.
Well, yeah, it's a big story. I have obviously I'm born in South Africa. I'm actually originally from Johannesburg, but I grew up very close to the Transvaal Snake Park. Now, many Americans, especially the older guys in the zoos, are aware of the Transvaal Snake Park. It was quite an infamous facility back in its day, and that was part of my inspiration. But I also spent a lot of time out in the veld, you know, collecting, hunting for snakes, and that obviously had a big influence on me. And I've always had an interest in African snakes. We do have quite a variety of species, especially endemic species in South Africa. So it was quite an exciting childhood. I've stayed in a couple of different provinces and dealt with a variety of species over the years. House snakes in particular has just always been a constant for me. They're actually one of the first species I started keeping. My mother was very encouraging of my interest in snakes from an early age. She, in fact, had some house snakes of her own before she was married. And she told me what nice snakes they were. But I suppose I don't know how far you want to go back, but
this is a 2-hour show or a little bit longer. Honestly, you can talk about everything you want, man. You dig back as deep as you like.
I'll keep it relevant, but yeah, the first encounter with snakes was actually my father was out. He was building a fish pond at the time, so he was out in the veld collecting rocks for his fish pond. He was going to build a nice waterfall, and he flipped the rock and found some snakes, and just, you know, decided to bring them home. And they were not the best species to keep in captivity. This is a Cape centipede eater, but it got me interested in snakes. And then from there on, I sought to get a pair of snakes of my own. And it was actually my first species was a pair of house snakes, the African house snake. Well, at the time we called them the brown house snake. I suppose we should probably get a little bit into the classification of the house snakes in general. I'm maybe getting ahead of myself here.
No, you're right. Yeah, definitely want to cover a lot of that. And as we're doing this, like always, Ben will be going on Google, bringing up some imagery for us as we're bringing up different species or different localities. He'll try to keep up with you, but like I said, as we go, we'll just start plugging in some pictures to give everyone something to look at. So start laying it on me, man. Break this species down and everything about it.
All right. Well, the family of house snakes, or Lamprophilidae, or the genus Lamprophis, has actually undergone many changes in recent years. I believe back in 2011 there was a phylogenetic study on the group done by Kelly, which found that the group descends from more than one common ancestor. So therefore not suitable for the same taxon. So a few changes came about as a result of this, and one of those was the resurrection of the genus Boedon. Remember, I told you the genus had changed to a Boedon. Previously Lamprophis. Now, the Cape house snake that we today know as the Cape house snake, previously the brown house snake, was Lamprophis filiginosus. It's been now changed to Boedon capensis. There is still a variety of endemic snakes within the family of Lamprophis. And some people are familiar with other house snakes like the Aurora house snake. Have any of you heard of the Aurora house snake?
Love the Aurora. I think it's one of the more beautiful ones. I absolutely love the green on it.
It is. It's a very beautiful snake. It's one of the most attractive snakes from southern Africa. It's a smaller species. This is in Lamprophis. It's a green with a little dotted yellow line down its back. And it's a half-felt species, very shy, inoffensive snake. They mostly feed on nesting rodents, geckos when they're young. Okay, so the old group of house snakes, yes, that's the one. Yeah, the group that we knew as Lamprophis, which originally included the Cape house snake. There's, I was playing with the kids' toys there. Excuse me.
You're fine. No big deal.
It's throwing me off with the zoo train going. Let me just move that so it doesn't happen again. Excuse me. Okay, so there's a few other endemic species. People might be familiar with the olive house snake. This also has been changed. That used to be known as Lamprophis inornatus. It has now been moved actually into a whole new group of snakes, to the water snakes like Lycodonomorphus. So there's been many changes, as I said, within the group. Another species that's quite iconic that people might have heard of is the Swazi rock snake. A whole new genus was erected for that snake called Inyoka. But the species that's most common and abundant throughout South Africa is the Cape house snake. This is the species that today we focus on. We specialize in the Cape house snake. It's also the species where most of the mutations have occurred. Other snakes that might have been termed as house snakes that might have commonly come into the US probably were originally the Lamprophis filiginosus, now Boedon filiginosus. Which that group in itself has also, it's been after that study that was done, it was found this widespread species that it's likely that there's many cryptic species within the filiginosus complex. So house snakes is, as you can maybe tell, there are many species and subspecies and also locality types out there. Depends which part of Africa you're talking about. The group as a whole, Boedon nowadays is widespread throughout sub-Saharan Africa. And the only species of Boedon in South Africa is Boedon capensis, the Cape house snake. Yeah. And that's the species that I think we will talk about most today, and also has all the mutations that people are getting excited about.
Wow.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ben.
So we keep African fowl snakes, and they follow a similar naming. Like and I have trouble with my Latin, but it's Lima formosa capensis. And
Formosa, I thought that I know that. At the same time, there was also a change with them. I know them as Mahalia capensis.
Yeah, I've heard that actually.
And I believe that the new genus starts with the G. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that's interesting that you keep Cape fowl snakes. We also work with the group of Cape fowl snakes.
Yeah?
They are the best captive fowl snake. They're also the species that readily takes to rodents.
Oh, yeah, they do.
Who aren't familiar with the Cape fowl snake, it gets its common name from its triangular in cross-section, and its scales don't overlap like other snakes.
Yeah.
It's got a keeled scale that doesn't overlap, so it actually gives the texture or the whole feel of a metal fowl, basically.
Yeah.
This is thought to actually or aid the snake when it eats its prey of other snakes. They're
Yeah.
actually one of the main snake predators of house snakes.
Oh,
Side note.
I didn't know that. I do think that they're like one of our favorite snakes right now, just because of the keeled scales make them awesome. It's awesome that you keep them.
I quite like them.
Yeah, they're real cool.
Yeah, that's
the mutations started popping up in the capes initially. Now it seems like in most species, I feel like the first thing found in the wild typically, or spotted in the wild, is normally an albino. What was the progression of discovering mutations within those guys? Did you guys start with the albino? Was there something else that popped up first?
Yeah, great question. In our original field guides in South Africa, Bill Branch, the late Professor Bill Branch, was one of the famous authors that we all used to, get his field guides and follow. And in that book, there was a picture of an albino house snake, and it was labeled as a xanthic phase. Okay. Which I didn't think, maybe the terminology wasn't correct, but I don't know what the history with that specimen was. But I think it was in the early 2000s. I know that the first house snakes that were found were in Natal. The first mutations that were found were in the Natal province, and that would have been the T-positive albinos. And then in the same area also originated the first strain of T-negative albinos. Then we also got the ghost or hypomenelistic house snake, which is also a very interesting specimen. It almost looks like it's in shed, the natural color. Very akin to the ghost ball python in a house snake form. So those were some of the first mutations that popped up in South Africa, and all in a similar vicinity.
Oh, wow.
Interesting.
That is
So, kind of getting into this a little bit. So, at what point of your life did you make the transition into deciding to be a breeder, and were house snakes the first animals you worked with?
Well, they were probably the first species I bred. I mean, the decision to become a breeder came much later on in life. What was your original? You were asking specifically about the.
Oh, just let's say this. What year did you start breeding? We'll say at a professional level.
Oh, well, that would have been like after I'd finished working in Angola, and soon before. Well, we never sold snakes on any real level in South Africa. I mean, I've always bred snakes, since I first started keeping them many years ago. I've probably been keeping snakes since I was, 11 or 12 years old. And I've always had them and been breeding them throughout. But yeah, it was probably, what year was it? Maybe in 2016 we started. I mean, we had started a few years before. It was while I was working in Angola on a project, I was simultaneously building up a collection of Southern African indigenous species. And house snakes had always been a focus for us. I suppose I should reverse a little bit. With my wife, we started this together. She's actually from America.
Okay.
We met in South Africa at a reptile park when I was the curator of a reptile park.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we decided the decision to move to America and breed house snakes came a lot later, probably around 2017. And our initial idea was we were going to focus on a niche group of animals from Southern Africa. We do have many endemic species there, and a lot of species that are unique. And that was our original plan, that we were going to focus on house snakes and some of the other Southern African species, namely the fowl snake and mole snakes and eating snakes. And we also did a lot of venomous snakes in the early days. So it wasn't, it only became a later shift that we really ramped up the house snakes. We were doing all sorts of Southern African and African species.
Okay. So you've always been a reptile guy, then, it sounds like. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm actually more known for venomous snakes than anything else. House snake is just what got me started, and it's what I'm busy with, focused on nowadays. But yeah, no, I've been into everything from monitors to crocs and cobras, mambas, you name it.
Very cool. Go ahead, bud.
What's that?
So my friend's from South Africa, and I have a friend that lives here that stayed in South Africa and in parts of North Africa as well for long periods of time. And most people from there are like, if you see a snake, you kill a snake because, they're afraid of being bitten. And a lot of times where they're at, they don't have the ability to get the help they need. So my question is one of the reasons you weren't really selling any snakes because most people were like, why would you keep a snake in South Africa, especially a venomous snake?
Well, that's a big part of it. I mean, we've got a much smaller market. I mean, nowadays we actually have reptile shows there, and
really?
It's getting a little bit bigger. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But it's more of a hobbyist market. It's not as big as it is in the States. I mean, we don't have anything near Tinley.
Yeah.
Tinley is the elite. It's about as big as it gets outside the Pomona show, so it's really hard to compare anything to Tinley, especially.
I've heard of some of the stories. I mean, I think what you have in America is quite impressive.
Yeah.
So it's a much smaller market and industry, but it is growing. And one of the difficulties in South Africa is, depending on which province you live, you aren't allowed to keep indigenous snakes.
Okay.
We have that in places.
Similar rules in Australia, from what I can remember talking to Chris Cupper in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, so everything is pretty much, there's a lot of restrictions, there's a permit system, and depending on which province you live, it can be difficult to acquire such permits. And it varies from place to place. So a lot of people keep exotic species too. I mean, corn snakes and boas, Burmese pythons, various things like this. Ball pythons is very big in South Africa too. In provinces like Natal, they are able to keep indigenous species, so we see a lot more of those, and that's maybe been a good factor for the house snakes, which is also made them flourish and being able to breed, and there's been an interest in breeding for these different mutations.
Okay. And we spoke on the phone for a few minutes. You actually purchased animals from a friend of ours, Don Patterson, and had him sending ball pythons back to Africa to you.
Yes.
And I don't remember if it was the spot nose mutation you might have said. I can't remember for sure.
I got a spot nose and I got some lavender or het lavender albino stuff at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
not to
period with stuff like that, it's hard to come by in South Africa.
Say that again, Dave.
I didn't mean to. I'm all talking. I'm going to stop for a second. We were all talking at the same time. I'm really messing this up. What I was trying to say is just a follow-up to that, and I apologize for interrupting you. Now, we get lists from Africa all the time of all these mutations that are constantly being found in the wild. They're going to America or Europe to be developed. And then it seems like, are they just being now sent back to Africa for you guys to work with? Are you guys also getting stuff from the collectors in Africa before they leave the country?
There's been a few. I mean, obviously, people must realize there's a lot of distance between South Africa and West Africa countries like Ghana, Togo, and Benin, where ball pythons come from. Okay, so we're not neighbors as such. There's no real connection. So there are some importers who have got it right and managed to get ball pythons out of Africa. There's one breeder in particular that we've been working with in South Africa, who's quite well known, Rassi Erasmus from Ball Python Morphs, and he has actually pioneered a lot of new genes that he acquired from imported wild dinkas that has been proved genetic, and he's working with many new combinations. I would say he's one of the guys on the forefront in South Africa when it comes to new genes, but these are things that he acquired long ago that he's been working steadily. We don't get, there's been normals imported into South Africa. There's been some of the venom producers who import from West Africa, gaboons and rhinos, vipers to produce venom. They might also bring in groups of ball pythons, but I don't think we're not getting a lot of stuff. I think the Americans have surpassed us when it comes to getting the dinkers and stuff. But on house snakes, on the other hand, is a whole different story. Okay, South Africa is not like the rest of Africa. We don't have a wild caught quota. So anything leaving South Africa has to be captive bred. Everything in our collection, all of our stock, was acquired from captive bred sources or bred legally in South Africa. Those captive bred babies exported to the US. So from that point, we've got a unique connection to the source where these things come from. We bred a lot of the stuff on our own farm in South Africa. Okay,
that's very interesting. And I came across you. Basically, Boas had made a post about you, which I had mentioned. And I went on and started stalking you guys. And if I remember, it was like 570 or 590 animals or so you had imported into the United States when you moved. I might be way off, but
it was under 700. It was a lot of snakes. I mean, I was packing from early me and my wife, we were packing from first thing in the morning till way past midnight. It was insane.
That's pretty incredible. What percentage
I recommend
in the country are house snakes?
Excuse me, I missed you again.
Oh no, you guys, it's my fault. What percentage of your collection coming in was house snakes?
Wow, probably more than a third of it, because we brought in a lot of venomous stuff as well. We brought in a lot of our offspring from our venomous collections, and then it was pythons was the other percentage, various species. But it's probably definitely more than a third.
It sounds like a pretty good bit. I'd assume that's probably the largest group that a single breeder in the United States has right now of that species.
Oh, and I did it twice. I went back, just over a year and a half ago, and I brought more.
I like to hear that, honestly. Generally enjoy hearing that. Yeah. Because, when we started, my comment about a species having an opportunity to really take off, especially in the United States, is variety. We've always seen albinos and T negatives here. We've seen the hypos here, but there's never been a very large variety of house snakes readily available. And when people have the opportunity to really start getting into a lot of different colors, a lot of different species, things have a real opportunity to take off, even if they've been around for a long time.
Yes. There's so much interest here. I mean, unfortunately, people just don't have all the information, and we've been wanting to put out, better information. It's just been, we're still playing catch up from the move. But there's a lot of interest in house snakes, and they tick so many of the boxes for people. I mean, there's different localities, there's different mutations, there's different species, if you like. The size of them, their metabolism, they eat readily, they're very easy, they make excellent captives. They've got this, as you say, this python look about them, so it appeals to a lot of us. As you said, I don't know who Mike Weissman at the time when he contacted me. We chatted on the phone. I only found out later that this is a big boa guy, and they've got that look. I think they will appeal to people like that too. It's just as soon as people become aware and familiar with the mutations, the localities, the line bred stuff, there's so many flavors out there.
I like that.
And house snakes, if I can jump in, one thing that's a big appeal. So I've always been told they're like the easiest to handle. Like they generally don't bite. They like really nice animals. Is that true?
No, not exactly true. They do bite. When they're babies, they're very nippy and they can be a little bit wiggly, but they settle down to captivity, with normal handling. They become extremely tame. You can feed them from your hand, hold them afterwards. They're a very easygoing snake. In South Africa, this is a species that we all recommend as a first time keeper snake. they've only in later years become more sought after by, the fanciers. It's just people who had them as kids as well.
Okay. So it's the corn snake of Africa, because everyone here always says your first pet has got to be a corn snake.
I always recommend when people are thinking about their husbandry and what kind of snake am I keeping, compare it to a corn snake. Now, some of the differences are they don't hibernate like corn snakes do. They can't take such low temperatures as corn snakes. It's a subtropical species. Probably in South Africa is where they're the most cold tolerant, because we still get a little bit of, there's areas where it can get to freezing, not for very long, early in the morning, the sun comes up in the day, it's warm again. But there are cold places in South Africa, so those are a bit more cold tolerant, but nothing compared to a North American colubrid. So this can be a positive for people. You don't have to turn them off. If people like, keeping their snake, feeding all year round, you can feed it all year round. They happily eat all year round.
That's awesome.
Okay.
That's one of the differences. They've got a very fast metabolism, so they can take a lot of food. Another thing is that they are very prolific. It's an oviparous snake. They lay standardly easily 2 clutches in a season. Some of the species can even lay, 3, 4. I've even had up to 5 clutches in a season. It's too much. But the Cape House snake can easily double clutch. So some people like that.
And how big is a clutch?
Clutches average from about 6 to 12 eggs.
That's great.
So about your average for ball pythons from your low to your high.
But twice a year.
I'd like to jump in. Yeah, right. I want to jump into the ins and outs of now of keeping and everything else, because usually we start there, but I like kind of jumping around a little bit.
That's fine.
So let's say as a new breeder that's on the outside looking in saying, God, I am really interested in these. I want to go out and pick a group of babies this year. Start us from babies, bringing them up to adulthood. Tell us a little bit about diet, how often you're feeding, what goes into, is it a seasonal breeding for you? Is there food cycling? You don't have to give us all your secrets, but for the new guy who might want to give this a shot, let's start from the beginning with them if you could.
Okay, so a hatchling is very similar to a corn snake hatchling in size. I'm thinking in inches now. What's it? 20 centimeters babies. So the babies they're small. They can eat a pink mouse from the start. So normally when you get them from us, they'll be eating pink mice.
Okay. Are you scenting them for trouble feeders, or do they typically take to mice pretty easily?
No, the Capensis takes to mice very regularly. There's other species that can be a little bit more difficult. We do work with the Boedon lineatus, the striped house snake. They often want to eat geckos as a first meal. So we have tried with different scenting options. In South Africa, it was a lot easier with access to geckos. So we've fortunately been very successful with the braining method. So sometimes stubborn feeders, they take straight away with a brained pink. Mm-hmm. Just frozen thawed brained pink, that normally gets them started. Others might need a live pinky for their first meal. So between that, those two methods, we usually have good success, especially with the Capensis, the Cape House snake.
And how often do you feed them?
Usually weekly. Sometimes females in the breeding time, you can give them a little bit extra. Sometimes I regulate the size of their meals. It depends on what your keeping methods are. So they can be kept in various different methods. We're currently using an ambient heat method for them. So ambient temperature of, what's it now in Fahrenheit?
75.
Let's see. Ben will do the math.
82 to 86, 31 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
On high end. And then, so whenever you're working with ambient temperature and not providing a hot spot, you can keep them with a hot spot. Very easy, just the standard like you would do with a corn snake. If you have heating in your rack or your cage, depending on your system. But we typically feed an appropriate sized meal weekly. So whether it's a hatchling, we'll get a pinky, a juvenile, maybe a fuzzy, sub-adult, a hopper, adult, an adult mouse. Typically, we wouldn't feed much. I mean, it depends if we've got something else on hand. But an adult mouse, the big size mouse, is a sufficient meal for an adult, especially a female house snake. They're also sexually dimorphic, I should mention.
Okay.
Males tend to be significantly smaller than females and also have an obviously longer tail. So when they get a certain age, also easy to sex visually.
Okay. Cool.
So the males, our biggest males would eat hoppers. There's no need for the male to become huge.
Yeah.
Okay. But as somebody who owns male as a pet, if they're doing readily feeding and maybe feeding a little more than we might, that animal can get a little bit bigger or will get a little bit bigger.
I beg your pardon?
Oh, so pet owners that don't, non-breeders will feed regularly. They're not ever hesitating on a meal. And sometimes you'll notice even in a ball python where our ball pythons will be, let's say, between 600 to 1,200 grams. But a pet owner sometimes will feed them so much that they'll get upwards in the 800 gram range for a male. Is it the same thing with the house snakes that if overfed, your males will get bigger?
Yes, definitely, and they can get fat, just like any snake. And if it's a non-breeding female, she'll just pile on the fat as well.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So, yes, I mean, I don't know. If keepers or pet owners want to feed more than weekly, I think weekly is plenty.
It varies. It depends on the species, but I have noticed
you can give them twice a week. They'd every day if you had to give it to them.
Really? Okay. Well, we got them to size now. Let's jump into the breeding season. When does your season typically start, and when's the most of your egg production?
Okay. Well, I try and run things as close to the seasons outside where we live, and now we're living in New England. We came from South Africa, so obviously the seasons. I mean, we're from the southern hemisphere. So our whole collection basically had to be cycled over to the northern hemisphere. So that was a bit tricky our first year. We had stuff being laid out of season. But typically now I like to try and stick to the season. So breeding in springtime. So
okay.
April, May.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you start on April or May.
And what about your second clutch? Do you wait a certain amount of days?
A month afterwards, once she's laid the first clutch, I mean, she'll eat. So I normally feed her the next day, give her a day, and then I feed her, and she's straight onto food. Maybe give her 2-3 meals, and you can put the male in again and start the process.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she'll drop the second clutch. We typically don't want our females to go 3 clutches. Some of them will do it whether you want them to or not, but I'm only putting the male in and doing
two double
cycles.
Gotcha.
With the females.
So again, your timeline on breeding in April is again very similar to a lot of colubrid breeders in the United States, minus you guys are not doing brumation for your collection. You're keeping them at a constant year round.
I try more food cycling, so in the breeding season you're giving them the bulk, If you're going to feed them more or bigger meals, as I said, you do it in the time when they're in egg production.
Okay. With this species, have you ever run into any regurgitation issues from overfeeding or oversized meals? Are they pretty hardy?
I mean, we've had so many over the years, definitely had some that's regurgitated if it was too big a meal, but typically not. If you're giving them an appropriate sized meal, even on ambient temperature, they digest it, within 4 to 7 days, no problem. It's gone.
How about egg incubation? Are you at your typical 88 degrees or similar temps as your ball pythons?
No. What is it now? I'm doing 28 degrees Celsius.
All right.
Ben's on it.
Is 82 degrees.
82. Okay. So are you just putting your egg boxes right on top of the rack system in your breeder room?
I actually have them in a specific room that's at 82. What did we say there?
82.
And in a cooler box. I've got them in individual tubs. They're inside an insulated cooler box just for a little bit of extra buffering. and they do very well. I mean, when I was a school kid, I used to just put them, they say, put them in your sock drawer. And that's what I used to do. I'll tell you, I've hatched out all my first house snakes just in my sock drawer. Given in South Africa, it was a little bit warmer ambient temperatures than it is, depending on where you live in the US. But yes, 28 degrees will do it good. But sock drawer worked in South Africa.
Okay, I like that. Easy peasy. Geez, I'm trying to think of some. How about you, Ben? Your mouth's flapping a little. Let's get it.
Yeah. So can you start going through some of the morphs you got going on that you're working with? I have your Facebook page open with a bunch of pictures I can go through, or if you want to, call out, anything like that, I'm in. So,
Sure. So
what should people be looking for?
The house snake for starters. So the Cape house snake, generally it can vary in coloration, but different shades of brown to rusty to reds, light brown, dark brown, chocolate, almost black, depending on which locality they come from in South Africa. Sometimes the soils that they come from also might affect the base color. Some of them can be uniform without any patterning, and some of them can be highly patterned, especially some of the specimens from Natal, like what's up on the screen now. But the snakes, all of them have a creamy white stripe running above and below the eye, one that goes through the eye, and then the other one above the bottom jaw. The stripes on above the eye are visible from above. So that's one of the characteristic features of the house snake. And as you can see, that very python-like head. Below, their belly varies from a white to a mother of pearl color. The one that you're showing right there, this is actually a Phaliginosis, so it's not a Capensis. We know these commonly as the black house snake, so that's Boedon Phaliginosis. At this stage, maybe it's a cryptic species, but we know them as the black house snake. Very nice and iridescent. People who like the black king snake seem to be fond of these as well.
Yeah.
And then the most highly patterned specimens do come from Natal. Some of them, they often have a longer stripe that goes through. The one that you're showing right now, this is actually a line-bred locality and a morph. So it's a T-positive albino with bred to a locality KZN red. So this is KwaZulu-Natal, and there's an area in northern KwaZulu-Natal in particular, this is in the Natal province, where these snakes are very red in color. So we've taken this base color, the red, and bred it to albino to make a much more stunning, impressive looking albino. Very similar to what people do with blood pythons. You want to get the reddest blood python, breeding it to albino to have the most impressive looking specimen. Similar idea with the KZN red T-positive house snakes. Now this mutation we've also, or this locality we've also bred into T-negative albino. So you also get the T-negative albino KZN red.
Okay.
Now obviously the difference, you can see them visually. Sometimes the T-positives are also known as caramel, depending on who you speak to, but they do have a dark pupil versus a red pupil in the T-negative.
Okay, interesting. Has anybody tried a double visual between a T-negative and a T-positive yet?
Yes, we do have them, the double visual homozygous albinos. Yes,
okay.
We produced them, was it last year, the year before, for the first time? Not intentionally originally, but we did pop out, and that was the explanation. So yes, it ends up being a much more, well, you can see it when you have them together. It can be very difficult. Even sometimes you'll double guess yourself with a T-positive and a T-negative, because they've got vertical pupils, and when they're in the light, the pupil gets small, and then you can't see the color. So that can be a little bit difficult, and depending on the angle, so there's been a bit of confusion back. Is this a T-positive or T-negative? When you have them next to you, you see very clearly. T-positive dark pupil, T-negative with the red pupil, and then if you have the double visual albino, it's in its overall color is more muted as well.
Okay, cool. Clearly you guys have your leucistics. You're all white. You got your T positive, your T negative, and all.
You mentioned leucistics, but there is something that was originally thought of as a leucistic, but has since, I think it's undecided. It still has to be proved what it exactly is, but it's known as a blue eye. This is the common name, and this is a stunning snake, a stunning mutation. It does have blue eyes, depending on the tone you look. It's very blue and very dark eyes, and then it's got a mauve. I suppose that's the best color I can describe. Mauve, like a faint muted purple color. And these are stunning.
I'm gonna guess it's
with the blue eye color tone. I would now. What is it?
Now this we're looking at the bottom is a standard blue eye, okay, and then above is a blue-eyed T negative. So that's the double recessive visual there. I might point out that all of the house snake mutations at this point are recessives.
Interesting. It's very similar to most colubrids in the United States that there's not many mutations that are not recessive.
Okay, interesting. Didn't know.
Okay, that's really cool.
And then, of course, we also have the hypo. We mustn't forget about this. People are also not very familiar with it. Yeah, and I believe this is a stunning animal. Just by itself, the hypo is a very impressive specimen. It's got this ghostly gray in the blue look to it. So we've used the hypo and we've produced T positive hypos or sun glows.
Very cool.
As well as the T negative version. So we've actually produced some this season, the T negative sun glows.
Very nice. I had seen a mutation, and I meant to send the picture to Ben before we got started, and I'm going to give you a small description. Essentially, it appeared to be a white-sided mutation where the pattern on the back looked normal, but even halfway down the face and about halfway down the sides, it's pure white going down. I don't know if it's a one-of-a-kind animal, and if you're not familiar with it, I'll find the picture and send it to you after the podcast, but it was a very unique animal. Again, just half white, and the whole top had a normal pattern.
Interesting. I'm not familiar with that one in particular. I do, keep my ear to what's going on in South Africa where all the new morphs pop up, but that's one I haven't heard of yet.
I'm going to find you a picture. It was a very fascinating looking animal. I think it was something that may have popped up on my Facebook feed a few years ago, but I thought it was super unique, but I've only ever seen it once.
Yes. Interesting. So then what else can I tell you about? There's another mutation in South Africa called something, a marbled, which has got a very as the name suggests, it looks like a marbled tree snake from South Africa. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's got a very interesting pattern. It's a pattern mutation. So that's one of the new morphs that's come out in South Africa in recent years that we're still looking to import a group.
Is that an animal that you have in your collection now?
No, not at this stage. We definitely looking to add into the collection.
Okay, very cool. Are there many mutations you are not working with at the moment outside of the marbles?
Let me think. Now, the marble is one that's definitely there. What else is there? There was something that people were calling a pied, but I don't think it was a very impressive specimen. It only had a very small pied marking, and I'm not sure what happened with the project. It was, I don't think it's produced any impressive looking pieds at this stage yet. So that was something else. But the marbled was high on the radar. Look, there's another. Of course, I need to tell you about. we actually working with something that no one else has at this stage. A brand new strain of T negative albino. No, I don't think if you're searching for a picture, there isn't one up there because we hadn't put it up yet.
Okay.
We only produced the visuals last year, and this season we're producing more visuals. This is by far the most impressive looking of the albinos. It's T negative, got a pink pupil or a red pupil, but the whole eye itself is also red or a deep ruby color. So if you see them next to the normal standard T negative, it's like day and night. These snakes glow. So this is the line of house snake that's not related to any of the original Natal lines of albinos.
Okay. Locality or species, Cape, or where are
we're talking about Capensis as well, Boedon capensis, so the Cape house snake. And these ones were actually from the Eastern Cape originally. So it's a totally other side of South Africa, new locality, and we've got them in the pure locality form, and they've got a distinct look about them. It's a uniform colored snake. There's no blotching or patterning on them. Besides, the stripes from the eyes extend the full length of the body. So they're very striped with that look and the uniform color. So that shows up a lot of the orange too. And they also got, I don't know, there's a look in the face to them. I don't know if it's the thickness of the bands, but they're their own thing. It typifies a locality type. So that's something that we've been considering maybe releasing hets for the first time this season.
Okay, I know Ben does this every time, but I'm going to go ahead and call dibs on that one. I'm going to go ahead and make sure you save my information after this. If I'm going to break into this, it'd be very cool to break into something new.
We can get you some nice houses in your hand.
Warren.
If you got to give them to Mike first.
Mike doesn't even know about these ones. This is actually the first. This is actually the first time I've mentioned them. You know, we've had our hands full with this move. I mean, this has been a major challenge and a catch-up. So I don't have, you know, the collection and the setup is not exactly like I want it. We're still lacking in the social media department. We post quite rarely. I take more pictures than actually make it up. So we need to show people the stuff that we're working with. So I know we've been lacking at this. So basically, this is the first time I've actually mentioned this new T negative line. Yeah. And people are going to be really excited when they see it.
Very cool. Go ahead, Ben. I know what you want to say.
So I already, while we're all talking, I'm texting Ryan like, hey man, we're going to drive up to this guy's house and video at his house. And we're going to pick up some house snakes. So I mean, if you don't want to ship to Dave, I'm just saying.
Yeah, you said close.
Benjamin and his partner Ryan also, you know, they've already had their grind on YouTube. They have a station on there that gets a lot of followers. They do really well. This is kind of a side gig that we do. I just kind of weaseled my way into their thing, I guess you could say, so I could be more popular.
Mm-hmm.
Dave is very popular.
We've got some house snakes for you, but you need to experience the T positives and the hypos too, so you can really appreciate the diversity in the group.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you right now, I want a trio of everything. I'm not gonna. I mentioned on the phone when we talked, I don't just buy one or two. I'm gonna come in and buy everything if I'm gonna get into it.
Well, we'll happy to oblige. They're also conducive for this. I mean, they don't take up huge amounts of space. They can be kept in terraria setup, planted setups, naturalistic enclosures, but they also do excellent in draw systems. So, I mean, if you can keep a corn snake, house snakes do just as well.
Okay. So a couple more questions, more basic questions again about the species. With your males, how many females will a single male see during a breeding season?
Oh, good question. How many do we typically? No, we don't stretch them too far, but we have in the past, especially with the new gene that we had. They can service, I mean, sure, maybe 8 females comfortably.
Oh,
but
wow.
you have to obviously rest him and feed him in between.
Now, with your breeding, with corn snakes, we'll put them in and we'll actually catch a lock and take them out within an hour or two of introducing them sometimes. Is this similar to ball python breeding where you'll introduce a male, let them stay in overnight? If they're locking in the morning, let them stay in a little longer and then rotate them to the next female?
For ease, I just typically let them stay in overnight and I take them out in the morning. But typically they'll be locked up within an hour. And I mean, they can stay locked up for quite a few hours too. So I leave him in there for the night and I'll usually hear them, some rustling immediately, know that it's going to, they're going to have a successful pairing, or I'll catch them copulating. But then I'll pull him out in the morning. He could go to another female the next night. And I might work him down his group in the week, and then on feeding day, he'll come and he'll get his meal, and he'll sit out until he's digested the meal, and then he'll be happy to breed again.
Okay. So
some males, obviously, they can be too over enthusiastic, and they won't want to eat. So you might have to rest that male and make sure he gets a meal. But typically, they will eat and they will breed just as well.
Okay. But let's say safely for somebody getting into this, you'd be looking at more like one male to maybe 3 to 5 females safely.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even often, we might have just a single pairing depending on what it is, or a male might see 3 or 4 females, and that's what we'll do. Not more, because we have enough males. So I'm happy to, depends if he's a real nice male and we want to spread him around more, we might use him a bit more. But often a male will typically get 3 or 4 females in our collection.
Okay. So the Aurora, which is again one of the more eye-catching ones as it is, have there been any mutations that have popped up within those?
So I must stand corrected, but I believe there was an albino that popped up, but I don't know if it was ever established.
Okay, interesting. So I take it there are more people looking for the Cape house snake than anything in the wild at this point. Like you said, it's the most readily available. You guys have the most mutations in it.
I think people in America will just refer as an African house snake, and they're not really sure whether it's an actual Boedon capensis or Boedon filiginosus. But when they come to us, we're very specific, and we will advise them what they're getting. But the majority of what we work with is the capensis, the South African or Cape house snake. Which has all the mutations. But a lot of what was in the hobby in America before was filiginosus.
Interesting. But for a customer looking to get into it now with you, you know exactly what you have. You have pure lines. There's no mixing things up. So you get to start it all over now, in my opinion, in the United States, because the unique thing about, there's something for everybody. And I'll compare it to the carpet python guys. There are carpet python guys out there that are mixing all the different stuff together to make whatever mutations they have. I know to make the snow, you have to mix the albino with, God, is it the...
isn't it a coastal with the Darwin or something like that?
Coastal. Yeah, it's the coastal anearthristic.
Yeah, so some of us are against that sort of thing. So I personally would not make that cross. And we try not to with the house snakes. However, we do work with some hybrids.
Okay.
And this was because we bought them as a group from the originator in South Africa. When we were founding our collection, we went to all the main breeders and collectors in South Africa, and we sourced the best stock. So we've got a lot of different lines, unrelated stock. And one of the house snake breeders that we got stock from had produced snakes that he called the butter house snake.
Okay, I've seen butters before.
Okay. So this is actually a hybrid between a filiginosus, a Boedon filiginosus, and a Boedon capensis. So the Cape house snake mixed with an African house snake. And the African house snake in particular comes from a locality where the specimens are very green. Okay. So essentially what was made, first generation, you breed your albino to your green filiginosus locality. Resulting babies are now hets, but they've got a bit more green coloration. So you breed them together. Those hets together produce the butters. So it's basically a green albino, like a green albino Burmese python.
Okay, now is that the T
mutation? It's a locality. So you're breeding a morph from one species into a locality of another species. and that's how the butters were created. And we have been, we did bring a group of butters with us, and we have produced them in limited numbers. And some people have got some real stunning butters from us. They are bright yellow. The nicest specimens are, just lovely. They glow like sunflower.
Okay, very unique. And, again, with the collection, especially like when we talked about the hybridization, you could have a split collection. You could have your pure group, and then you could have your hybrid group. But okay, so that's the butter on the left, right?
So what we have on the what's it? It's my left is that's what was called an Illumo. Some people might know them as Illumos. So that's basically a green locality, het for albino, and then the visual homozygous albino green is the butter. That stunning snake. It's
pretty unbelievable, honestly. I mean, it's definitely a very eye-catching color.
It's often between my wife and I that's we have that argument. She loves the butters, and I'm not so fond of the hybrids, but people like them, so we're working with butters.
Well, we're American, and we have very loose standards for ourselves, so don't overthink it.
Well, I'm happier producing them in South Africa because they're not native here. If they get loose, they're not gonna, breed with the indigenous population like in South Africa. They're not going to find a pure capensis and introduce some filiginosus blood without knowing.
Okay. Now, are there certain lines where the two can meet in the wild, though?
There probably are integrate zones. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's what's happening within the filiginosus complex. I mean, there still needs to be a lot of molecular work and morphological work done on the group as a whole, and it's pretty sure that there's going to be various cryptic species. It occurs through such a large area, so much variation. It's the perfect species for that.
Okay, very cool again. Go ahead, Ben. You have anything on tip of your tongue while I work some things out here? Back in.
I'm constantly just thinking that we need to go up there and hang out with some of the stuff because Ryan and I and Dave, we've all been talking about house snakes for a while, and I do think that they are going to make it big, I guess, bigger than they are now in the United States. I think it'll be an upcoming species because they're easy and they're pleasing, and there's a wide variety. Do you connect with a lot of people, house snake breeders in the United States?
No, I mean, we've got customers who are building their collections, but not really established house snake breeders. I mean, I think that people are really confused what's available, and not really sure what lines they have or where it came from, anything like this.
Yeah.
I mean, when our idea, we were going to put together a group of house snakes that were genetically diverse, that with the intention of having a niche with these snakes in the US. And so we put a lot of effort in the foundational stock, and we've been refining that since we've been here, and keeping the best and making the best examples of these things. And people, it's been a lot of word of mouth. People have heard about these snakes. There's not really so many resources for them, but they've heard about it and want to know. And I mean, we try and help and advise people as best as possible. But we do have to work on putting out some more information and sharing more of what we're producing. But they're going to start becoming more popular as we start introducing more of these combos and line bred snakes to the market.
Well, and one thing I've always said, and this is more of a sales aspect of the hobby, but sometimes it's not worth showing your hand or really promoting anything until you have it for sale. You going out of your way and talking about how great these things are when you don't have anything to sell doesn't really make a lot of sense for your business. Do educate, of course, along the way, but even in ball python mutations, if you're working on a new combination that nobody knows about, you don't let them know what you're doing. You show them after you're done, you have something that you can sell. So, like you said, you guys are becoming more established now. Once you guys really get in there, again, and this might just me and Ben talking, but I really love this species. And honestly, even the conversation about how far you can take your males, the fact that you don't have to cool them down, how easy it is to get the babies going. I mean, they really do sound like they have a lot of potential.
They're conducive to captivity. I mean, I've gone through all varieties of keeping different reptiles, and there's a lot to be said with reptiles who do well in captivity, who are a pleasure to keep and to work with, and it is a snake for the majority of people who are interested in keeping a pet snake in captivity, and also for the discerning collector too, because there's some high end stuff too,
which is good.
And new rarities, especially in the US.
And that brings me to the next question that I think a lot of our listeners and viewers, I guess, that are going to want to ask is, what do these cost? Like, what would you see? Like, if you saw one around at a reptile show, maybe there'd be like a low end of nobody knows what this house snake is. It would cost this dollar amount. If you know your lines, it's roughly this, and maybe just give like an idea. You don't have to give specifics, but maybe an idea.
It's a good question. I don't actually have a price list with me. I should have, but when we first came to America, we looked at what had been available on the market, through past sales, and we went through different forums and did a lot of homework on what people knew about house snakes, for starters. And we based some of the prices on what the market was saying for them. But then we also know of what's actually rare. I mean, people were more interested initially, which surprised me, interested in T-positive stuff. And in South Africa, I don't know where I was, the T-positive stuff was more available than the T-negative stuff, but Americans wanted it the reverse. So that was something that we had to take into account. So when we know we've only brought X amount of groups, we really know what the rarity of these things are. We do have quite a varied price list. Let me see now. We've had normals from bottom end of $50, $70 to albinos around the 200 mark. Or sun glows go for around 500. You get a really nice butter. They're costing close to 700. Some of our double het stuff with the blue eye and albino and hypo are also up there, a couple of $100s.
Okay, so nothing super unreasonable. Are there anything that you're working with that's over $1,000?
Nothing that we're really releasing at this stage. For an individual snake, I think one of the most, if you're looking at but we're not selling any of them at this stage, the double visual blue eye T negative.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Average, they're also in the affordable range. The higher end stuff, like the butters, around 700. The new strain of albino is going to be a bit more expensive for visuals, but we're not releasing the visuals at this stage anyway.
Fair enough. Gosh, kind of all over the place. You got anything going on up there, Ben? You don't have to force it.
No, I do, but I want to talk more about Cape file snakes at some point.
That's fine. We're very interested in our Cape file snakes. They're quite rare in South Africa.
Yeah?
Yes. They're very secretive snakes, so you don't often see them. They might be a little bit more fossorial, and that's one of the issues with not finding them. There was a place in Natal that I knew that people used to come across them regularly, actually in pineapple plantations. They grow the pineapples on heaps, like underneath plastic, and these foul snakes used to be in there, maybe feeding on house snakes who are eating rodents who are in there. Foul snakes, they're quite tenacious. They will not hesitate and take down a baby cobra, and they'll eat it while getting chomped on. The cobra's biting them, and they will just, cobra's got a bulldog head they'll hold on to. fowl snake will just keep munching it as it goes. So they'll eat puff adders, various different species. But in this, they're a very shy snake.
Yeah.
I don't know how yours are. They always tend to want to hide their heads under their coils, you know?
Yep. And they've never struck at us. Like, and we have a few adults and we have a baby, and I have a friend that has bred them in captivity, and we got a pair, and we kind of got it a little early when they're still really, really young. And the male did really well, and the female ended up not making it. And it was just an odd thing. And so now we're like, all right, we need another female. But have you bred them in captivity, your fowl snakes?
No, we haven't at this stage. We've got a group that's prime now and ready to go. That we had adults in South Africa that they were breeding, and it was in the transition of the move. We had raised those ones up, but we decided when we were coming to America, we're gonna bring our captive bred babies that we got from a breeder. Captive bred babies. We're gonna bring those with and raise them in the States, and that will be our breeding stock. So not at this stage, not yet.
Yeah.
It can be a little bit tricky to get going, but the good thing is the Capensis is one of the easiest species. They will regularly take to rodents. Whereas other fowl snakes that might come in as imports from West Africa, like a black fowl snake, they don't really do well on rodents. Cape fowl snake is most suited to that. So they'll even eat they eat rat pups or big small rats when they get adults.
Yeah.
Just to jump in, and then Ben, you go ahead and get the hand up. I'm gonna really quick one. So your breeding season starts in April. What months during the year do you produce the most hatchlings?
Most hatchling. Oh, when they actually start coming out.
They start hatching for you.
Yeah, it's like now, I think.
Okay, so I need to be visiting you or calling you right now if I want house snakes. So every year in October, my guy.
We're getting the new stock established. I mean, I'm still getting the last clutches of eggs come in on a daily basis. You know, we get a couple here and there. But there's always something happening in the incubation boxes, new clutches popping out on a daily basis. So we're in the phase of getting them all set up into the individual racks and starting feeding trials. So
no, of course.
To be ahead of it, but soon, not yet.
Okay, no, that's fine. I just need to know when to call you. I didn't know if I had to call you in like 3 months. You lit a fire. I'm going to call you sooner than later, it sounds like. But okay, go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry. You can jump back in.
No, I'm interested in that too, obviously. If you were gonna say, hey, for a new breeder into the species, maybe not new breeder, but new to the species, what would be like, hey, you should probably start off with, you're talking about Cape fowl or Cape Capensis house snakes. Is there like, hey, you should probably just get like a couple of normals or classics and say?
Well, I suppose that depends on your own budget, because you can jump in at whatever level that you can afford. A lot of the stuff isn't available, even on the lower end stuff. There's not so many albinos out there. I mean, you won't always find them, or hypos. People don't have hypos. I don't know people breeding them. That's still something new. So you can jump in at any level you like, because the care of them, they are suited. It's all the same. They're all suited to a novice keeper. So if you want to try your hand at keeping snakes the very first time, a house snake is a good choice specimen.
Yeah.
To jump back into the whole breeding part of it. God, what was that question I just had? Before it runs away from me. Shit. Okay, so we can. Okay, I'm sorry. How long does it take for them to get to breeding size? Do you have a certain weight you like your females to be at?
I never really weigh them. I just know from sight. This female is ready to go, and they'll even breed at a smaller size than I would like them to, if you let them. Normally, about from 2 to 3 years for a female for maturity. some depends on how you feed them. I mean, you can easily get them to breeding size in 2 years. A male, obviously, a lot sooner. I mean, he'll be there in, you know,
Okay.
if you push him. But females, 2 to 3 years.
Okay, so that's about most average for most species you work with. Now, do you do palpitating or anything to check on your follicle development as you go, or is it all just if it happens, it happens?
Not really actually palpating for follicles. I just assume that they're going to go. You can see that they start swelling. I mean, when they're getting close to laying, they will refuse food, and that's a sure sign that eggs are imminent. So you should get your nest box in and start preparing or expecting eggs. And obviously remove once they have their pre-lay shed. Once you see they're nice and swollen and they give you their pre-lay shed, then you can go ahead and, you know, remove the water a couple days, or give them a small water bowl that they won't lay in, depending on what method you use. But that's, yeah, they normally, and then once they've given you that first clutch, like I said, you give them a few more meals, and male in again, and they're ready to start it again.
That brings up a good point, if you don't mind me jumping in. So you said you have a lay box in there. What do you do? So I saw in some of your pictures you have aspen, it looks like, for bedding.
Yes, over the years we've kept them on a variety of different substrates, and all work very well. One thing you need to keep in mind is that they have a high metabolism, so you're going to need to clean that substrate fairly regularly. So in the later years, we've moved to more of an absorbent particle substrate to do some spot cleaning. And you know, once they shed after a cycle, we'll maybe clean the whole substrate. But you can keep them on aspen. You can keep them on the cocoa blocks or cocoa chips. I've seen peat moss. People have kept them on gravel, pine shavings. Obviously non-scented, you know, clean, dry stuff.
Yeah.
There's a variety of different substrates. But regarding the substrate for the nest box, also a variety of different things have worked over the years. I've even used wet paper toweling. When I was out in Angola in the bush, I've used a cocoa mulch that was from rotting coconut trees that I found myself, and it worked just as well. I've used vermiculite, sphagnum moss, just something that's going to hold the humidity. Nowadays, we've been using. Actually, last season we experimented for the first time with the cocoa blocks, or ReptiChip, I think it's called. Hey.
Okay, ReptiChip, and that's your incubation medium.
That's your incubation medium, but it would also work as their substrate as well. Obviously, for the incubation medium in their nest box, you will keep it more damp than you would for their enclosure substrate.
And do you keep the eggs off of the substrate in the, like, do you put something in there?
You mean once you've collected the eggs and you set them up for incubation?
Yeah.
I use a vermiculite perlite mix.
Okay, so you're not using the cocoa nut chip in the incubator with the eggs, you're then going to a vermiculite perlite mixture?
That's right, yes. Sorry if you misunderstood there.
I got you.
You're okay. Honestly, with ball pythons, we use the cocoa chip blocks, and that's how we incubate all our eggs. And we did that all through the season, and I think we've hatched out about 1,800 to 2,000 babies so far this year with no complications. Everything's been perfect on the cocoa chip.
Interesting. I suppose you just need to get familiar with your water ratio with a new substrate.
So let me just go ahead and put this out there. I'm not that smart. I don't know exactly how much water I'm adding. It's all visual. I guarantee it's never been the same per clutch, and it has not been an issue yet. And of course, we'll put press and seal or saran wrap on top to keep the humidity in there. We do have a hole, of course, in there, but I've found that it just kind of works no matter what. That cocoa chip really holds that moisture in the middle, and the outside is not over super saturated, and it's worked very well for us. Last year we did the vermiculite perlite, and we've even suspended them above water, but it just seems to be working, so I'm not going to change it.
Interesting. Yeah, if it works. I've just always stuck with vermiculite, and I've in later years added some perlite mixture to it, and I use, depends, a 50-50. It depends what ratios I have. It's pretty easy for the house snakes. Back in the old days, I would also just have them on moist paper toweling.
Yeah, which is, I think there's a lot of different ways to do it. It's what works for you.
Yeah.
We should talk over each other again.
A little bit. We're American. We talk over people a lot. But I guess last thing, and then we're going to probably bounce around a little bit. How long is the clutch in the incubator before it hatches?
Okay. I was trying to think of this now. It's usually before 60 days, 50 something.
Okay.
55, 50.
It's very normal to what we have.
Yeah, about 55, 60 days, just a lower temperature.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you'd have obviously the temperature determination, but we, as I said, we used to about 28 degrees. Is that 82 Fahrenheit?
Yep.
80 on the lower end for the incubation, and they take, before 60 days they hatch. Normally never need to cut eggs. They pop, they slice the shell themselves and they all come out, no problem. You can separate the eggs or incubate them in a clump together. Either works.
Okay.
Do you? Now I lost it. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, shut up. You got it there. Go ahead. Dig it up, buddy.
What was it? Oh, so have you ever noticed if you keep them a little warmer or a little cooler, you'll get a different sex ratio?
Yeah, I can't honestly say. I mean, over the years, there's definitely been some fluctuations up and down, and I've never, it's never been controlled enough to actually record that, so I couldn't say if there's any future determination there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we start really jumping around on this, are there any other tips that you've got that you found over the years that would help people looking to get into these guys?
Looking to get into them.
I know we've covered a lot, but I guess little tricks of the trade while breeding, things that you found work better, like you said, introducing your males at night, maybe not during the daytime. We discussed your egg laying, and again, a lot of this is very similar to Kluber breeding, which
you mean specifically regarding breeding?
Yeah, I guess mainly for breeding, or I guess the overall health of the animal. Just stuff that you found that could help the new up and coming breeder.
Yes, I mean they are generally a hardy species. Do well in captivity. Various different keeping methods, as I say, from displays to rack and breeding setups. It would be more regarding your systems, how you work with them, your regular maintenance routines, just making sure your temperatures. I mean, temperature is one of the key factors when it comes to them. If you're going to have your ambient temperature, you need to make sure that that's constant, and each one of them is getting the right temperature. Difference between the bottom of the rack and the top of the rack, that's something to take into consideration. Or your hot spots. But they can do well in quite a large gradient of temperature. As long as they're able to heat up efficiently to digest their food, they are normally problem-free. An enclosure that you are able to maintain efficiently for them, that's one of the key things, because you need to keep up with that. Fresh water, and lots of mice, and they're happy.
Okay. Humidity is one thing we didn't cover, because you said you use aspen, which is a low humidity substrate, but you also use the cocoa chip, which is a high humidity.
Correct, and I'll tell you where I do things, or where we do things differently. A lot of the species from high up in Africa, like the Feliginosus complex, it's more tropical up there compared to South Africa, a little bit more temperate and arid. So I find that they appreciate a bit more humidity. Like the black Feliginosus, for example, or even the green locality, some like from Zambia or Uganda, they would maybe prefer to be on a cocoa substrate that can be kept a little bit more humid for them, or have access to a humidity box nest. What do you call it? Like just with sphagnum moss or something like that, that they can increase that humidity. But I would say generally for the species, they will do well in roughly 50 to 60% humidity, which in most cases is average terrarium or rack temperature with the or humidity with the water bowl. So that it depends where you live. Unless you live in a really dry climate, that's usually can be just achieved with just a water bowl in the enclosure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, our building runs on ambient. We run between 82 and 84 degrees, similar to you. And we also have humidifiers built into the building, which keeps our humidity level in the building around 55 to 60 as a constant. So again, I'm getting more and more sold on this stuff by the second. I mean, we kind of have the perfect setup for them already.
Yes, sounds like you got a nice setup. I need something like that.
Yeah. In time. You're here. You're getting settled in, man. I'm really going to be very impressed with the
Yeah.
But, well, okay, so should we jump and talk venomous for a little bit? Should we get off house snakes and just start going in other directions? You got anything else you want to talk about before we get out of this, Ben?
Not with house snakes. I mean, I'm down to talk about a few of his other species for sure.
Well, let's get into
we jot it down and we come back to it.
Okay.
Sounds like us. But Ben, why don't you take control for a little bit? I'm going to enjoy my Gatorade.
Okay. So there was a couple things about the venomous that I wanted to ask about. The first thing was it difficult to import them when you moved into the United States?
Well, each state does have its own laws again. And we were originally going to move to either Florida or Texas. Like this, South Africa never dreamed he was going to end up in this ice and snow of Arctic Circle, New England. So, and where we are, you can't keep venomous reptiles in Rhode Island in particular.
Okay.
So that was part of the sacrifice with coming up to this part. We had to decide that we're not going to work with the venomous collection. So because we were originally going to move to Florida, I do have an active Florida venomous keepers permit, and we imported the snakes through Miami. That's one of the international hubs. And then we have a partnership with some other venomous keepers there. You might be familiar with terrestrial and arboreal reptiles, Cody and Pia Bartolini. They are the ones who had taken on our venomous stock to sell from Florida. So we were never going to bring the venomous stuff up here in any case. We bred it in South Africa, and it was a decision that was made. We were going to not work with venomous anymore after that. So all of our venomous stock originally is now with the terrestrial and arboreals in Florida. We had a very nice collection. Some of the things we focused on or specialized in is the Aspidilaps complex, which includes the coral snakes. I think you call them coral cobras here, and then the shield nose snakes or shield nose cobras. Aspidilaps lubricus, and then the Aspidilaps scutatus and intermedius. They've got a big rostral shield on the nose. It's a small little elapid, maybe 2 foot maximum. They stand up and they've got all the attitude of a normal cobra, and they huff and puff and strike, but they come in very pretty colors, and we were breeding them for color and banding, and we had some real nice stock.
Okay, so that's a lot of line bred traits then with those guys compared to mutations?
Well, in the Aspidilaps, you do have a mutation in, I think it's the scutatus, the shield nose snake. There is an anthristic mutation. We were breeding anuries or anthristics. That's the only one. But
ignore Ben. He's got a wife. He's doing wife stuff right now.
Okay.
Barely. Go ahead.
So, again, we're going to jump back to this. Is there an anuthristic or axanthic house snake out there at the moment?
Not that I know of. I believe the blue eye has been called an eleutheristic or an axanthic before, and I'm not sure if that's correct.
Okay. I was just curious if the ingredients were out there to make us snow with this species yet, or if it's.
If you've looked, didn't you see the picture of the T negative blue eye? I mean, that's as close to a snow as I can imagine.
That was leucistic as hell in my eyes,
Yeah.
man. That thing was so white. Like our snows, and typically our snows in any mutation will have full pattern, but just have the much lighter appearance. So again, that animal is very, yeah, I guess it's a little more pink when I'm staring at it more. My sunglasses might be fucking this up for me.
Yeah,
no,
they're
you're right.
a little bit pink when they're young, but yeah, no, that's an impressive snake. It did remind me of a snow corn snake. I mean, I've never seen anything like it, but
Yeah. No, it does have a lot more pink hues to it. Like I said, these glasses, I just want to look cool. I'm not getting the full I can't appreciate the animal with these lenses on. So yeah, I just couldn't see.
being outside somewhere there.
Yeah, I'm outside. I'm at a bowling alley.
Interesting.
This is not by choice. I got to do it. I live on a mountaintop and there's no internet up there. I can't do these podcasts from home. I got to take a ride down the road.
Yeah, you said you have bad signal out there. So fortunately, even though we're rural, we have good signal.
Yeah, no, I'm middle of nowhere, man. You're at least in the Northeast. It seems like even when you're in the middle of nowhere in the Northeast, you still have good signal just about everywhere.
That's true.
But okay,
So back to venomous.
let's talk a little more venomous. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. What would you like to know?
So how many species have you kept?
Oh, wow. Geez, most of South Africa's, I think all of South Africa's deadly dozen, if you want to call it that.
Really?
Everything from black mambas and green mambas, snouted cobras, worm slung, vine snakes, puff adders, gaboon adders, Cape cobras, Mozambique spitting cobras, black spitting cobras, zebra banded spitting cobras. Yeah, all the horned adders, the lot.
Man, the spitting cobras, I think, are getting a little more popular here. Oddly enough, I've been hearing more and more about people keeping them.
There'll always be a niche market. I mean, not everyone should have a spitting cobra. The problem with keeping spitting cobras is you're always constantly exposed to small amounts of venom in the atmosphere and the air. They spit and the venom dries on surfaces and becomes particularized, and then you inhale it. I've known people to be or develop hypersensitivity to spitting cobra venom in particular when you work with them regularly. I have been spat at numerous times by spitting cobras, and I just get normal reaction. But it's a horrible experience. It definitely works as a deterrent, and they're really accurate with their venom too. It was, when was it? It was early 2000s, was it? I assisted on a documentary with Mark O'Shea. I don't know if some of you remember Mark O'Shea. He had a series at the same time. Steve Irwin had a series. It was only the two of them back then. And he came out to South Africa, and I helped catch a bunch of spitting cobras because they wanted to do tests on these snakes to see how the venom actually comes out of the fangs. And they found that there's actually like a rifling, like a gun barrel in the fangs, so the venom actually comes out spinning. And found that they can spit more than 50 times before they start venom starts deplenishing. So they've got a lot of ammo on them and incredibly accurate. They seem to know where your eyes are, follow the movement of your eyes, and it's a very defensive. It's an excellent defense, especially you live in the bushveld with other predators and things that would eat you. If you can project your venom into their eyes, you need glasses like that for sure.
Wild.
Wow.
So what is it like being in South Africa? I want to hear more about the ins and outs, community-based stuff. I'd just love to hear more about what's going on over there before you left.
And reptile-wise, I think.
Reptile-wise, food too. Food in there, but reptiles are good.
Yes. Well, there is a reptile community. South African, or the South African reptile keepers are very serious and into their hobby, but most of them are hobbyists. There's very few people who do it full time as their sole income and have a reptile breeding business. But as I say, the expos are becoming more popular. But South Africans, we grow up outdoors. So we're always in the veld, in the bush, when we, if you're a naturalist and you have an interest for these things. So we're coming across these animals in our backyards, or when we go away on weekend trips, or, we like to go to the Kruger Park, or, there's various reserves and parks and natural areas in South Africa where you can see reptiles in the wild. So I suppose our interest is, the foundation of our interest comes from what's around us. So many of us have, whether you were allowed to or not, reptile enthusiasts, we kept the species that we were able to catch, in our respective areas. It was only, later in my, later years that we were able to buy things like corn snakes or boa constrictors, and those were very expensive back when they first came into South Africa. So most people, grew up catching stuff in the veld and bringing it home and learning what they can feed it and how they can keep it, and a menagerie of different enclosures. I mean, my snake room growing up had all sorts of different things in it. And we didn't have purpose-built racking or anything, so it was a whole bunch of different fish tanks with who knows what in it, from house snakes to spitting cobras, rinkels, mole snakes, bring back giant African bullfrogs, things like that. I have a lot of fond memories, in my school days, going, school holidays out with friends. We'd go into the veld surrounding, agricultural areas, or, any patch of bush we could, start flipping logs and anything that was lying around to find indigenous reptiles.
Okay. Now, did you go to school for herpetology? Because you had said, what was your job before you had come here?
Oh, I worked, no, I didn't go to school for herpetology. I actually went to college to be a game ranger, a field guide, as we call it in South Africa. So I studied game ranging and lodge management. But I've been working in reptile parks, for most of my working career. But before I came to America, I actually was working a contract job out in Angola, pretty north, almost West Africa. I was on the border, on the banks of the Congo River. I could see Kinshasa across the other side. So I was right in the north of Angola. And that's very interesting because Angola was, had 40 years of civil war. Yeah. And it doesn't take tourists.
Yeah.
Just because I was doing contract work out there, I was able to go and explore and, catch snakes. That was my job out there, in areas that hadn't been sampled before. So that was very exciting. I did that for 10 years.
Wow.
That's pretty interesting. Now, most of the collecting was for studies on the species, genetically, so on and so forth, milking, anything like that?
No, not at all. I was contracted to an oil company, an American oil company, who was clearing a patch of land that was going to be developed for a liquid natural gas facility to send LNG back to the US. That was the plan. But where it was located was it was basically on a peninsula, that there was a base where expats used to stay and accommodated and have their facilities, and also a village where the local people had their, it was a small fishing village. So when they were clearing all this land, the concern was all the snakes, and there were plenty of snakes out there, were going to now flood into the surrounding industrial area where people were working in, oil facilities, and into the local community, neither of which they wanted. So I was, under the health and safety, but I was their company snake advisor, or what turned into be wildlife advisor, because I dealt with, mammals and bees and all sorts of things.
It sounds like a pretty unique job. I'm kind of into that. Now, are you relocating animals when you were doing this job?
I was basically, because here's the other part of it. Because of the Civil War and the base that I was on, this was a battlefield. So there were unexploded ordnance in the field where they want to start construction. Okay,
This is
so
just getting better and better.
yes, it was quite intense at the time. Before they can even start construction or send any engineer on there, they have to get EOD teams out, explosive ordnance teams out. We got experts come out from Croatia even, and there was others. These were all ex-military guys. There were South Africans there who were there in the battle and the fighting back in the Civil War time. And so this field where we were going to work in, it was full of mortars and potentially landmines. So they first sent EOD flailing machines to detonate them, and manual detection with dogs. And so the fear was these guys come across a forest cobra, of which they did many, while they're clearing landmines. This was a health concern. So I had to, now the snake catcher, they'd call me on the radio, I'd be on call, and I'd go in there, have to put on a bomb suit, helmet, padding, the whole lot in this, 34-degree heat, and go and catch a forest cobra and try not to step on anything that might explode in the process.
So they have a show in America called Dirty Jobs. I think they need to start a show with you that's the most manliest jobs possible.
Yeah, no, that was... Well, that was in the early days on the project. It was really exciting. Obviously, once we started clearing the field and all the ordnance had been removed, the mortars, there was at least that factor of danger was removed. But there were still plenty snakes way up until the construction of the facility. And I've caught Jameson's mumbas up on high lift cranes and in the scaffolding of buildings while there's been teams working, and various different scenarios. I mean, they were building right in the bush on the shores of the Congo River, so there was all sorts of things.
That's pretty wild, man. So were there any species in that area that would be considered endangered that, I guess deforestation could have affected them?
Well, actually, I also worked with my wife and I. That's actually how Nicole joined me after some years, joined in Angola and started working. We had a sea turtle conservation project, because on the same shores where we were building this facility, we had a population of olive ridley sea turtles who would come up. So we were actually the first to ever put GPS tracking devices on these turtles who were nesting on the shore to find out where their migration route, where they're moving to and from. And it was quite interesting. Some went down as far as Namibia. There was one, I believe, that almost got to Brazil and then came back. But nesting on the shore. So that was an endangered species. Obviously, all sea turtles are endangered species, and it was quite a different experience for me to get to work with sea turtles. I did a monitoring and conservation program in conjunction with a tagging and GPS program on the population for many years, maybe at least 6, maybe it was almost the majority of the time I was there. So almost 10 years.
It's really cool. Honestly, I mean, it sounds like you got a real passion for animals, whether it's a snake or a sea turtle. I think you're going to be a happy guy at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, I've always been a naturalist and loved nature and wildlife. And I've lived and worked in some interesting places. So I've had some great opportunities to pursue that interest.
Oh, that's really awesome. Well, I mean, how's your stay in the United States? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, bud. We're going to get into the U.S. after. Benjamin.
No problem.
So when you were starting to say that you're working in that area and stuff like that, I was going to say, well, what was the most dangerous animal you encountered? And then you're like, well, then I'm putting on bomb suits and all this stuff. And it was kind of like becoming a moot point. But have you ever had any real close calls, like a story of a real close call with
well, once I was working with a machine operator with a big excavator, and he was removing trees. Yeah. And we had a signaling system worked out when he sees a snake, and he was making the signal. So I come running in because, they're digging and they might crush the snake or whatever. And I pulled out some big African pythons, and, there was some significant reptiles out there. So he'd make the signal and I went running in, and this time it wasn't a snake. He had just hit into a beehive. And Americans know our bees as killer bees. We just know that bees are killers. And I was then in a bomb suit and being attacked and swarmed by a beehive. So I basically ran myself out of my clothes through the bush and into, the shores of the river to get rid of these bees. I didn't watch where I was walking, but I ran.
Yeah.
It wasn't a snake situation, but it could have been, but the bees got to me.
Yeah.
Again, manliest job ever, buddy. Like, nothing compares to your job.
Yeah, I had some exciting times back then. Obviously, living in South Africa, I also worked, before I started in Angola, I worked at a reptile park that's in the Bushveld that's really renowned for dealing with problem calls for black mamba. And I got a lot of experience working with mambas back then. It's the area is almost in the boot. Kruger National Park is like a boot, and this little town is in that little corner there. And so it's surrounded by game reserve, big 5 game reserves. I mean, elephant and lion, you name it, in this area. So it's a hot spot. You get puff adders and African rock pythons on the road, snouted cobras, worm slung, and mambas. So in the summer season, we would get called out. 200, 300 venomous snakes in a season, and many of which were mambas and cobras, and obviously some of the most venomous species in South Africa. So that was also a great experience, living in the Bushveld region and getting to work with these snakes.
Is it just being in Africa, you're just going to be a little more manly than Americans? Because all these jobs sound pretty crazy to me. Is this common there to have opportunities to do this kind of stuff?
Well, we got a lot of farmers in South Africa. That's a tip of me, but most people don't. I mean, like we were speaking earlier, South Africans don't generally like snakes.
Yeah.
Michael Andy, and the last snake he hisses is now holding up your belt, holding up your pants. But no, it's obviously a rarity. I was an odd one who liked snakes and reptiles. Definitely the minority of people out there. But a lot of people are comfortable with being in the bush and are, familiar with wildlife.
Yeah. One of my friends, his good friend is a farmer outside of Johannesburg, and he said he was eating one day. They're out in the field, and they were just eating lunch one day, and a snake came up. My friend didn't see it, and the farmer, he's like an older guy. He took a pair of pliers.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Hey, don't move." And my friend's like, "What?" And he just grabbed up the snake, like grabbed it up, killed it with a pair of pliers. Didn't even flinch, like it was an everyday occurrence.
Yeah, that's more typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they could do this. I can't do that.
That was so funny. I did that. I don't know what we were talking about. I did it. And he said, "Hey, all the South Africans I know can do that."
Yeah. Their finger. I can almost make it click. All of my South African friends are like, "No problem." It's crazy.
Yeah, no. South Africa's a beautiful country. It's so many diverse ecosystems. I mean, we've got something of everything. Our coastal areas are amazing. You said you've been down to Cape Town. That's also got very unique ecosystems. Fynbos, around Table Mountain.
Yeah.
Karoo. We've got the Bushveld regions. It's semi-arid, a lot of deserts too. It's something of everything. So it's a hot spot for reptiles and endemic species as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the questions I was going to ask is, you have a very, I guess, niche, focusing on your African species. Now that you're in the United States and almost everything is at your fingertips, you've been tempted to kind of get into.
Yeah, so much. Everything that I've ever wanted, is No, there are a few species that I'm after. I do have a big interest in boids in general. I actually did bring a collection with me of boids that I was working with in South Africa. But yeah, there is stuff I'd like to add on. I'm also a ball python enthusiast. I got into them later on in life. I only bred my first ball pythons in 2014. But I don't care if they're the most common snake. Yeah, I also really love ball pythons. It is obviously an African species. and there's so many mutations and creations I'd like to get into over here. And then, there's some other rare species. Since I've been here, I've got myself some inland carpet pythons, which I've always wanted inland. I actually, some years ago as a tourist, we went out to Yellowstone, and on the way, I managed to go and visit Justin Julander. Yes, the author of the Complete Carpet Pythons, and I saw the inlands in the flesh the first time, and I've wanted them ever since. So, it was a year ago. I got myself a trio of those. I've got a wish list. That's what you know.
No, Julander's a great guy. He was actually one of our early podcasts. Really great talker. We talked about a lot of his experiences in Australia. Really great guy. I liked him a lot. And, like you said with ball pythons, man, the paint jobs here are endless. The reality is we have so many color and pattern mutations. We'll never be able to do every combination.
I know. It's quite daunting for someone getting into it for the first time. I'm at least familiar, I used to watch the old Ralph Davis videos, and I know all the base morphs and where things come, a little bit of the history. Nowadays, it's like there's so many different things. It's so hard to know which one to go into. But relating to what we're actually working with ourselves, I have collected some what you call dinka projects when I was in South Africa, many of which are proven genetic, and we are working with some unique ones here, and I hope to, distinguish ourselves with some of the different morphs that we brought from South Africa, maybe breeding them into some of the more established recessive genes out here.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we'll talk ball pythons whenever you want, buddy. We produce thousands of them here, and I'm all about ball python talking.
Yes, but another species I'm really I've always loved is the Angolan python, or the Angolan dwarf python, and this was something that was unobtainable when I was a child in South Africa. They're heavily protected, only found in Namibia and southern Angola. Very hard to come by, but I managed to get some before I captive bred specimens before I left that we're working with here. Hopefully this season will be the first time I get to reproduce them.
Well, I'm a big fan of Angolans also myself. Just the body build. It's like a ball python meets a carpet python. Just this really nice long animal. It's got that ball python head, a little thick in the middle. I've always been a fan.
Yes.
I've never had more than one, though.
The beaded scales is very unique. And if you see the harsh environment that they come from, it's a beautiful environment. I love places in Namibia. They really are a hardy snake. Also make excellent captives. Great size snake. And it's just one of those special species that I've always loved as a kid, and I'll probably keep them as long as I'm doing this.
Have you ever worked with sun gazers? Either the cataphractus.
I'm familiar with them only when I was at the reptile park. The Transvaal Snake Park had sun gazers, but I never really worked with them directly. I've known of people in South Africa. They're obviously critically endangered, and they lock you up and throw away the key if they catch you with a sun gazer in South Africa. Yeah. We actually call them the O-folk, which means old people. It's like there's something ancient about them, little standing in the grasslands.
Yeah.
So close encounters, anything mammal related in Africa? I'm sure you've run into some kind of mammal along the way that scared the hell out of you.
Oh yeah, when I was doing my game ranging practical, I nearly got mauled by a Duggar boy buffalo, what we call them, the old males who get kicked out of the main herd. They're losing their hair, they cover themselves in mud, and they're full of shit. They've got an attitude that's unbelievable. They're highly aggressive. And I walked out of my tent in the night. I don't know, I needed to go to answer the call, and there was a Duggar boy right there, and he hooked with his horns and gripped the side of my tent, and I just dived back into it, zipped it up. I don't know if that was going to do anything, but luckily it didn't come through it. And various close calls with elephants. When you're training to be a field guide, you have to experience what it's like to be charged by an elephant. and not run, or know when to run or not to run, or what a real charge is. So they did push the limits a bit. And yeah, so elephants, some close calls. I mean, I've had encounters when I've been in the bush somewhere, near the Kruger Park, digging a baboon spider out of its burrow. And a rhino has come up to me, and, I had to get a couple big trees in between me and the rhino. One other instance, this is one that makes my blood, still chill. I was on my off days. It's when I was working at the Swazi Reptile Park as the curator. So I was taking some time off, and I went to go visit a pal who had a hunting lodge, basically, that was closed, but it was neighboring with another tourist Big Five game drive lodge. So we were walking on his side of the property, but the fences are open. So the Big Five move between is no different. And I could hunt for snakes in this pristine bushveld, look for reptiles. So I was walking with him, and I went off on my own. I saw a rock monitor, Venomous albigularis, up on a tree. So I climbed onto this tree to try and get the rock monitor, who went into a burrow in the tree. And I fiddled around with the tree in this monitor for a while, and then I couldn't get him. So I got back into the bush, and I found the path that I'd walked on, started making my way back to the lodge. And over my footprints, I see superimposed lion prints, big like this, fresh. And there was one dominant male lion in the area that we all knew. It was notorious. And he was on my tail. Don't know where he was while I was hunting for the leguvar, the monitor lizard. But that was a close call.
Jeez. Well, again, man, I feel like maybe I'm not living life to the fullest over here. I've got nothing. I have got nothing that compares to this stuff.
Well, there was a lot of stories.
No, good on you, man. No, that's awesome. Go ahead, Ben. What you got for us?
No, so just with South African friends, knowing them, you can talk stories all day. I mean, it's part of the culture, right? So you just talking stories on stories on stories. I mean,
like I said, we outdoors people. We like to we call it a braai. We make braai, a barbecue. So South African braai. And we sit at the fire and we tell our tales, especially when you're in the bush lodges, working as a game ranger, or, I had a lot of friends in the industry there. You hear so many stories. Everyone goes off and does something exciting. You're working in the bush every day. You could encounter, who knows what.
Yeah.
So, exchanging tales at the local bush pub, or, at the Boma fire, it's,
Yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world, and there's nothing that compares to living close to the Big Five. When you're walking in Big Five territory, where there's elephant and lion and buffalo, your senses are alive. There's never a time that you'll be so aware. You can smell where the animals are. You better learn to. It's something else.
Yeah.
It all sounds terrifying, but amazing all at the same time, honestly.
They say if you can only visit one country ever in your life, you need to go to Africa twice.
I still have to get to Australia at least once, man. Australia has always been on my bucket list. Africa's now on my bucket list after talking to you.
For sure. No, I love Australia too. I've been out there once myself, and I need to go back. I mean, they say it's a herpers paradise, definitely. They got more species of monitor lizard and python than anywhere in the world. So if you're into monitors and pythons, for sure. But South Africa is a very special place with the megafauna and the diversity that we have. Nothing quite the same.
Yeah, I definitely want to go back. I tell people it's the place I had the second hottest food that I've ever eaten was in South Africa.
Is that so? Yeah. So curry or what?
So I did have goat curry, and I actually fell in love with goat curry when I was there. But
Durban curry, but they make goat curry in Durban too.
I was about to say Durban because Durban's like where the food I guess the reality is that the food quality is kind of poor there, so they just spice things up.
No, you're going to get the Natalians upset. No, there's a big Indian community in Natal. They've been there for a long time, and that's the place where you want to go and get, your Indian curries. You can go to the spice markets there. They make it up. They know how to make it. The real McCoy. There's something called the Bunny Chow, which is quite popular. It's a half a loaf, or you get a full loaf or a half a loaf. A loaf of bread. They cut off the top, hollow it out, fill it up with the curry, and then you go and take it like that and go and eat it on the beach.
That's awesome.
The typical thing in Durban style.
Yeah. So my friends say that in Durban, the people would eat their food spicy, and then over the years, you just couldn't get spicy enough. And so I guess the saying is that people in Durban, their blood is spicy because the food is so spicy.
Indian babies will eat food from the start that will burn you and I. You grow up with it.
Yeah, so I ordered food and I said I want it hot because I'm a man, And my friend's like, no, he wants it mild, and I was like, no, and he goes, try it mild first. So I'm eating it mild and I'm sweating, like pouring sweat, and
they say they give you a roll of toilet paper with it.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, South Africa. Well, there's various different foods throughout South Africa, and like I said, we like our braais. Did you ever eat any boerewors?
No.
Spicy South African sausage. It's not hot, but it's got coriander. You have to eat that. A wors roll is like South Africa's favorite.
Man, I'm gonna go back.
You never want to eat a hot dog again. We had to now. We can't buy. You can buy wors at any of the like local stores there. Now we have to make our own, which is not a bad thing, but South Africans love their wors so much that we have to make it even when we move to America.
Yeah. The calamari there is what there's. Dave, you wouldn't believe it, but there's calamari stands. That's like we have hot dog stands. They have calamari stands. But they just
you can get all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were just down in Nashville, or I was down in Nashville, Tennessee this weekend, and there is a deep fried Southern style chicken sandwich I get when I'm there, and they've got it mild, medium hot, and then they've got real clucking hot. And I'm clucking hot, and I can't handle clucking hot. I can do hot and sweat a little bit. Clucking hot's too much. I guarantee you'll get to that sandwich like it's nothing. Me, I suffered through hot.
Well, I wouldn't say all South Africa food is typified by hot, but Natal, the Indians, they obviously bring the curry side of things.
Yeah.
What else is good that we have? A Karoo steak is something I miss. A deboned sheep rib. It's been marinated. Put that on the grill with the hot coals.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
Slop chips.
Slop chips. Yeah. Nicole, my wife, she loves slop chips from South Africa.
Yeah.
Just a big chip that, cooked sort of soft. We put salt and vinegar on them.
Yeah.
It's just, simple things that you think that, this is so simple. And why can't they have it here?
Yeah.
Well, when the house snakes really take off for you, you can open up a restaurant with your house snake money.
Well, they're not going to be on the menu, but we certainly...
I don't mean eat them.
Okay, this is a reptile channel. You're using bad language here, huh?
So I'm so sorry. I am so sorry.
Yes, next time.
I mean, all these other delightful things that you ate in Africa, you could just bring it all here. There's a niche for food from a farm.
I've ate also variety. I mean, we obviously have a lot of game meat. I mean, I've eaten everything, impalas and kudus to giraffe and even elephant in my time.
Yeah.
But,
I'm sure that's going to bring a tear to a few of our listeners' eyes.
Well, I didn't go hunt the elephant to eat him.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes it any better, buddy.
Well,
we really love our elephants here.
Sometimes when there's an elephant and there's a lot of meat around you, you make the most of it.
No, I get it. It's survival.
In this particular instance, I'll tell you, this was an elephant who was causing trouble on a lot of the reserves and was attacking vehicles with tourists. So the rangers had to cull that one, and They gave a lot of meat to the local community. Usually the meat in Africa don't go to waste.
Nope.
It will get eaten up one time, and I was the recipient of some big chunk of elephant that I don't know if it was his elbow or a bit of his neck or what. But I made elephant steaks that night.
All right. Delicious.
On the open fire.
Was it good?
Did you enjoy it?
You need a good set of teeth to eat it. It's better for stewing.
Ah.
It's like it was very tough beef.
Okay. I like interesting.
Yeah.
It sounds like you made pork wrong on this one. You gotta slow cook it for hours before you hit it on the grill.
Yes, I learned it the second round.
Oh man.
One of the other big things that we love in South Africa is biltong. Did you not eat any biltong when you were there, Ben?
I did not.
Oh, not. What kind of South African trip did you have?
I was told that I should, but I just didn't.
You know, I don't know, what was it here? We had all of the Americans eating biltong. I don't know if you know, there's another reptile guy called Brian Barczyk.
We
Yep.
know.
Yeah, Brian came out to South Africa.
Yep.
The first time he came out, and we took him on a tour and showed him everything. He was eating biltong from the first day.
Yeah.
Now you make tacos out of that, or what exactly are you doing with that tongue?
No, it's not tongue.
Oh, I hear tongue over here. I'm sorry. What am I-
Biltong. Biltong. It's like jerky. It's like beef jerky or
Oh, fuck, who's not gonna eat beef jerky? I thought you were talking about tongue.
That's what I thought you were talking
Americans
about.
always think I'm talking about tongue. No, it's biltong. It's
Okay.
Instead of being dried in an oven like you'll do with jerky, this is basically spiced and hung wet and dries.
Oh. Yeah, I didn't eat that. I would.
Favorite. South Africans love the stuff.
Yeah.
I'd eat the shit out of that.
No.
We took a ball python breeder to a Mexican restaurant this weekend, Babu, and Babu has a very interesting palate. When we were in Texas last week, he was eating chicken feet. Really disgusting.
We serve them with heads as well in South Africa. Heads and feet. We call them walkie-talkies.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I don't have a sensitive stomach, probably because I don't put, chicken feet in it. But yeah, just not very appetizing, man. I watched him go through like 20 of those things, and I just couldn't get on board.
With the claws and all. You have to
Paused
nibble
it,
around the toes.
rolled around in his mouth. He was picking bones out. It was gross.
If you're really a pro, you stick the whole foot in your mouth and pull it out clean.
Yeah, no, he really rolled that thing around in there, buddy. And then what? He was eating cow tongue at a Mexican restaurant, but that was actually really delicious.
Yeah.
lengua.
Tongue is edible. But
Yeah.
we were talking about biltong.
Yeah, it's, again, different page, but what you're saying sounds very appetizing. I will definitely get that.
Yes. I recommend it. Don't go to South Africa and leave without trying it.
Oh,
Yeah.
if I go to South Africa, I'm gonna eat some weird stuff, buddy. I'll plan a trip around you. I might need a guide. I'm a really good companion, buddy.
Yeah, no, I'm happy. We were actually looking at doing tours back to South Africa because we have so much knowledge of the place, and we've got friends who stay out in the bush still, and they're always saying, "Come back, come see us," and we'd love to. I mean, my
You
wife.
can sign me up.
Yeah,
Sign
no,
me up.
we went out, like I said. Brian came out, and he brought a couple of other people, and they did some filming out in South Africa. We took them into the bush, and they were on hunts. They got to see cheetah make a kill. They did some also once in a lifetime thing. Soon after, another python guy, Peter Birch, he also came out and did a trip.
We know him very well too.
Okay, and he's the Antaresia king, really.
He is.
He helped me feed a lot of my house snakes when he was on the farm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
He was texting me with me this yesterday, actually.
Okay. No, he's a great guy. We had a lot of fun out in the bush together. Yeah, I'd like to go and visit him that side one day.
oh yeah, Peter's a great guy. He used to come out. There was a couple years where he would come out to almost every big show we had here. I had seen him at Daytona Beach one time for the show. He had been at least one, maybe two Tinleys. I think they even went to Pomona at one point.
Yeah.
Yep, did that too.
No, I mean, we still would like to do more trips to South Africa and potentially do some tours, get people from here to come along.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good memories out there and places that we'd like to go back to and trips we'd like to redo. So hopefully that will be part of our future, just once we get ourselves settled and established here a bit more. And obviously this whole situation with lockdowns and so forth is lifted, we can start doing trips back to South Africa.
Yes, sir. I'm in. I was just going to say, so I only learned like a few things in Afrikaans, but I was going to say to Dave, because I couldn't say it to you, Warren, but the only thing one of the ones I remembered is, yes, Donner Blexum.
Oh, yeah.
So, Dave.
Well, they taught you the good things, eh?
Yeah. So, Dave, that's the one you have to learn if you go. You should say that to people.
And you're going to do that to Dave.
I guarantee you're fucking with me right now. I know you're fucking with me right now.
So basically, I mean, it means like I'm going to thunder you, but basically what it means is I'm going to hit you so hard that the snot from your nose is going to wrap around your head and make a bow tie. I think that's what the imagery it makes, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's variations of that. I mean, there can be some really descriptive swear words in Afrikaans too, and obviously, there's some things just can't be said in English and translated. It's best to be said in Afrikaans.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I guess really quick, you want to jump off Africa, or do you want to stay in Africa, Ben?
No, I'm good. We can move on. It's been 2 hours. We're
teetering. We're almost there, man. We got a few more minutes left in this. So while you've been in America, have you had any chances to hit any of the bigger shows?
No, regrettably not. I mean, we never really wanted to have our business model as really going to shows at this stage. Especially, we've just had we've got a year-old baby, and he's been taking up a lot of our time. With the reptiles, honestly, we don't get too much free time. So it's a full-time job here with my wife and I. I rely on her as well for a lot of the collection. Since we've got a baby, she might do feeding of the hatchling snakes while I'm doing, the breeders or something like that. So our life has pretty much been consumed with catching up from the move with South Africa, raising our baby, and trying to establish this business. So at this stage, we haven't hit any shows.
Well, a very busy man, and I mean, in the region you're in, you do have a New England show that pops up, I think 3 to 4 times a year. You have the White Plains show, Long Island, which is a good show. You're in a unique area, even if you just went to go walk around and see some cool animals.
Yeah. Yeah,
no, for sure. The problem is not just walking around. I'm going to have to come home with a couple of them. And it's nice to keep me focused. Our niche is the Southern African stuff. We're working with this, and I'm like, this python, that boa,
It's a very, very, very addictive hobby. I mean, every time that I'm like, I just want to focus and specialize on a couple things. Like, I'm really obsessed with garter snakes right now. I've been doing a lot of research on them lately. Again, house snakes have been in the back of my mind forever. It doesn't take a lot to make me want to get into something new in this hobby.
Well, hopefully the house snakes have sparked your interest, and we can set you up with a nice group.
For sure. Honestly, I already scheduled it out. 2021's house snakes. 2022 is garter snakes. 2023, I'm a little all over the place. I kind of want to get into turtles next. I don't know how successful I'll be with them, but I just really love turtles.
Is it? I used to be very fond of tortoises, and obviously living in South Africa, we have a great diversity of tortoises. I had big leopard tortoises out in the yard in big pens, just breeding. The babies would emerge from nests that I didn't even know was there, and then there's hatchlings around, but they were from the area.
Yeah.
I had various different species as well. Our terrapin, or as you call freshwater turtles, are not as colorful as the American ones. So a lot of ours are very drab compared to the ones you have here.
Yeah,
but
terrapins,
diversity is great.
Yeah, we actually have a few different terrapins here. That's kind of like been my little starter thing. And tortoise-wise, we have redfoots and sulcata and a leopard, but a little bit simple. You know, like you said, living in the northern climate where you get cold, the species I love to see outside more.
Yes.
We can only really take them out for about 4 months of the year, maybe 5 tops before we have to bring them in. So they get out for some sun, but a majority of their life, unfortunately, is inside.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, that is a problem with certain species of reptiles, chenolians, crocodilians, monitors. I'd prefer to be in the climate where you can keep them outside. Yeah, I had originally thought I was going to have all sorts of exotic crocodiles and live in Florida.
Yeah. Well, we both know a lot of crocodile guys, man. If you don't already have all those friends, you just let us know and we'll hook you up with the right guys.
I left my croc days behind in South Africa. I had quite a variety of them and a nice little collection on the farm. It's
So
can't
Dave's saying though, if you want to go visit and check them out and hang out and play with them.
Oh yes, yeah, no, for sure. I love visiting Florida. I actually came. It was in 2011. I came when I was still living, and I had no intention to move at that time. I came and did the crocodilian biology and husbandry course through St. Augustine Alligator Farm, Croc School.
Oh.
Yep.
I got to see all 24 species of the crocodilians.
It's a good time. We know a few people that are affiliated with St. Augustine. That's awesome. Well, honestly, I don't want to cut it, but did we peak? Is that a question or did we peak? I don't know what you're doing right here.
No, I was saying we might have been peaking.
Well, no, I wouldn't call it. Honestly, we could talk with you for hours, but
I do feel like that.
Sure.
Our viewership's got a good 2 hours in them, and then their attention spans go to shit.
No,
so,
that's good. Let's not drag it out then. My wife's away at her sister there. I must let her know when I'm done. Also got some stuff to do before the evening ends. It never ends when you're farming snakes. So
yeah.
Nope.
Well, it's been good talking to you guys. I appreciate the invitation. Hopefully we were able to get out a lot of the information regarding house snakes, and
I bet there's more information
in the future.
I bet there was more information in this on African house snakes than there is anywhere, like in one video. I really do.
No, like I said, I think this is great. I've been looking forward to this one for weeks. I sent them a screenshot of your business weeks ago. I mean, we've been hoping and beyond. I mean, this was awesome. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thanks a lot, you guys. It was fun to discuss all of these things. Gave me a chance to reminisce. Now you made me homesick.
We're sorry, man. We'll do this again sometime. I promise you that. And I'm sure Benjamin, like you said, they do their work with their YouTube channel, do a lot of videoing. If the invite is there, I guarantee those guys would love to come up and do a video of your collection if you ever want to show off a few things. And if anything, again, really do appreciate everything. Ben sends us off after that. Stick around for a second. We definitely want to talk to you before you leave. And, very, very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
So, thank you guys so much. And Warren, thank you for coming on. If you guys enjoyed this, please hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribing to our channel. If you're just listening to this, you can go over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Lets us know that you're watching it or, enjoying it as well there. If not, it's cool. Just listen and let us know. Message us, comment, and let us know if you like what you're seeing and hearing. So we appreciate everything. Make sure you guys are keeping it safe, but get into these African house snakes. I mean, come on. I think they're the next thing. Let's do this. All right. Thanks, guys, so much.
Give me a call.
Facebook page also, Bushveld. Keep an eye on what he's working on. We're all on the edge of our seat here.
Yes, Bushveld Reptiles. We're on Facebook and Instagram. Like I said, we're hoping to pick up the activity levels there. We know we're lacking on our social media side, but we are working with this group. We have nice projects. There's things that people are going to be really excited to see. We're going to start sharing more in the near future.
That's awesome.
Awesome, man.
All the links will be in the description below. So, all right, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys on the next one.
Awesome.